What's up, team? It's Sherman here from Geek Psychology. Life is a game. This is the walkthrough. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Tracer from Overwatch and how she's an ENFP. If you haven't played Overwatch, then I suggest you do. It's just a lot of fun. Tracer's a fun character too. And if you don't really understand the internal workings of an ENFP, this video will shed some light on that. It's hopefully not going to be as kind of deep and heavy as a lot of the other videos, but there is a lot to talk about, and hopefully I can cover enough of that so you have more of the understanding. And if you're like super into it and you really want to know more, there are tons of other videos on this channel and on other channels and things like that too that you can check out. Let me now talk about her backstory. I think the best thing to do, and this is going to get a little hectic, but I'm not going to read it through twice because it's like 3 paragraphs long. I'm just going to go through it and then explain the ideas, then go back to it and explain the ideas. So hopefully it can be followed. I'll put the text down below as well so that you can read it yourself with your own eyes and your brain. One more thing before getting started. This video might sound a little negative. And trust me, it's not fully intended to be like that. The goal is to show how things can go wrong and then how you can balance that out. So awareness of the negative side of things, of going too far into your dominant function and ignoring the introverted inferior function and auxiliary functions. Okay? Smiles. Alright, so Lena Oxton, call sign Tracer, was the youngest person ever inducted into Overwatch's experimental flight program. So, right off the bat, we have youngest person, which I have this kind of feeling about, especially extroverted intuition, but extroverted sensing as well. As it's kind of young, it's youthful. It's not like burdened down by the horrors and the reality of life. You know, it's not like none of that happiness is beat out of it yet. Because it's a perceiving function. It's just trying to pick up information that is going to be useful and important and then feed that to the decision-making functions. So yeah, it feels kind of wide-eyed and hopeful. And if you know an extroverted, intuitive, dominant, an ENP, you might get that feeling from them. Inducted into Overwatch's experimental flight program, the idea of experimental kind of connects to extroverted intuition, that dominant function. Like I said, it's looking for ideas and change and kind of exploring possibilities, right? So it's hit or miss a lot of times. you have something that you're thinking about, and then you explore this idea, and then this one, and maybe you just went too far, and then you're like, oh well, let's just go back, let's rewind and see what else, like what other direction we can take this, because it's fun and exciting. And known for her fearless piloting skills, she was handpicked to test the prototype of a teleporting fighter, the Slipstream. Known for her fearless piloting skills. Fearlessness, I was also talking about the youngest person, right? So it's extroverted perceiving functions, extroverted intuition, extroverted sensing are about kind of pushing things to the limit sometimes and getting more excitement, more information, just gathering more and more. And if you're worried about what will happen, then you're not going to gather more and more information. You're going to slow down. You're going to be more cautious. And if we're just talking about these functions isolated, kind of like we are, then extroverted intuition is going to be a more fearless function. And she was, handpicked to test the prototype of a teleporting fighter, the Slipstream. Extroverted intuition, and teleportation, I think, fit really well. Bouncing from one idea to another, blinking here, blinking here, blinking here, blinking over this thing, blinking off the edge, and then recalling backwards. Like, there's tons of things you can do with teleportation and by just bouncing from one idea to another. During its first flight, the aircraft's teleportation matrix malfunctioned and it disappeared. Lena was presumed dead. Not every idea connects, and it's experimental. Okay, so I mean, that wasn't her choice that it malfunctioned, but it's kind of connected to the same type of ideas. You just try this out and you can go this other way too. That's fine, you can try this too, it's okay. She reappeared months later, but her ordeal had greatly changed her. Her molecules had been desynchronized from the flow of time. Intuition is a future-focused function, and her inferior function, your inferior function as an ENFP, is introverted sensing. Sensing is a past and present function. So yeah, she's gonna be desynchronized from the flow of time because she's always thinking about what could happen. Where could things go? Where is this possibly going? Sensing is like what happened in the past. How does that relate to what's happening now, or what's happening right now, and how does that relate to my past? That was introverted sensing, and then extroverted sensing. Basically connecting to the present. And she, suffering from chronal disassociation. She was a living ghost, disappearing for hours and days at a time. If you know an ENFP who's going through some stuff, this might seem familiar to you. The living ghost, disappearing for hours and days at a time. It's a forced connection to introversion and trying to figure out where you stand on things, or going too far, a forced connection to introverted sensing and trying to piece together the continuity of reality. And like the ENFPs in my life, I have a couple, if they're feeling some sort of negative way about something, they don't want to be in this situation anymore and they'll leave the situation. Whether it's going to their room or just going out, taking some action in some way, just doing something to get out of their mind, or locking themselves up with their mind, but not connecting it to other people because they just are overwhelmed by it. Hope that made sense. Also getting physical pains and stuff like that. Living ghost. If I know the ENFPs in my life, when they're feeling bad about something, not feeling good, they actually like feel it in their body, in their stomach. Just things don't feel good. So, living ghost. There we go. Even for the brief moments she was present, she was unable to maintain physical form. If you're talking to an extroverted, intuitive, dominant ENP, in this case ENFP, sometimes they just go off. Their ideas over here, their brain just checked out, and they're in some other daydream, some other world. I do it too. And so as an extroverted intuition dominant, like as your main style, your compulsion to explore different ideas, it's gonna happen. It makes sense to me. Like, I can't hate on you.
Now, where were we?
Sometimes she had strange dreams about the past, including being a kitchen maid at a large house in the country. There's a brain region used for extroverted intuition, F7, that helps you imagine yourself in different contexts, seeing how things would be if you were in that position. I instantly lit up when I read that. That and just the idea of like, oh yeah, what if I was a maid in the country? That could also be an extroverted intuition type connection. Just imagining what if, right? I don't know how we know that it was a past that she was dreaming about. I don't know. It doesn't really say in the bio, but I don't know if it was a real past or if it was an imagined thing as the past, which could have some connection to extroverted intuition, dominant, and introverted sensing, inferior. So, moving on. Overwatch's doctors and scientists were stumped, and Tracer's case seemed hopeless until a scientist named Winston designed the Chronal Accelerator, a device capable of keeping Tracer anchored in the present. Alright, so Winston is an INTP, from my understanding.
Winston! You're an animal!
Empirical evidence suggests I'm a real animal.
And this means that he also uses extroverted intuition, but his dominant function is introverted thinking. And introverted thinking is a judging function, like introverted feeling, but it's more based on that detached logic, kind of that cold logic. And not saying that he's cold, because he's a very happy, friendly guy, but it's not basing decisions on your personal values, is what I'm trying to say. And so it makes sense that an ENFP would get support from someone who leads with an introverted judging function, introverted thinking or introverted feeling, because that is an easy way to become grounded a bit by having someone who constantly uses that style as a way to kind of supplement your own, especially if you have chronal disassociation and are bouncing all over the place and unconnected to time. You need somebody to lock you in. I don't know why a chronal accelerator keeps her anchored in the present, but there we are. In addition, it gave Tracer the ability to control her own time, allowing her to speed it up and slow it down at will. Connecting to your introverted functions as an extrovert and as a possibly unhealthy extrovert who is so attached to extroverted intuition, focusing in on your internal introverted judging helps you connect to your priorities, helps you connect to yourself, your values. It locks you down a lot more, like I was saying, and it gives you this kind of rootedness. Instead of just following the exciting ideas that come about, you see it and then you take that step back and you're like, well, this doesn't really fit with who I am as a person, and I don't want to have any influence in that situation in a negative way, or just check yourself out. And so Winston gives Tracer that stable reference point and more routine and more understanding, more control over herself. And this eventually connects to introverted sensing, the inferior function, because the auxiliary is kind of like a bridge to get there. If you can't go straight to your inferior function in a healthy way, you need to connect to your auxiliary and kind of use that to understand more about that introverted perspective. And then you'll get better and better at using your inferior function, or at least being aware of it. And without self-reflection, an ENFP is going to just, as Lenore Thompson said, coast on their intuition and just have no real lasting meaning and attachment to anything. You're just going to be picking up new and exciting possibilities. It's important to have the chronal accelerator attached to you to slow down and get more control over your time and energy and your resources and your personal account in a situation.
Need any adjustments to your chronal accelerator?
I think... Just kidding, Winston. It works great.
And allowing her to speed it up and slow it down at will, so it's not compulsive anymore. It's not just out of control, which happens when you get ungrounded and too focused on your dominant function. It messes everybody up. And with her newfound skills, she became one of Overwatch's most effective agents. That growth, though, like that's what happens when you connect to your auxiliary function in a healthy way, and you stop relying on recall and like just doing something and then trying it again. And when you sit down and focus that beam, then you're going to grow. You're going to get a lot better at whatever you're trying to do. So do that. If you are an ENFP, it is super important for you to connect to that auxiliary function, your introverted feeling. Really sit down every once in a while and just think like, is this the path that I want to be on? Am I doing things that are actually authentic to me and congruent with who I am and who I should be as a person? Or am I just kind of having fun and exploring the options, Also, extroverted thinking that tertiary function can be good, but it needs to be connected to your personal values in order to really be healthy. Don't just do things and take actions and make decisions because you don't want to think about the ramifications and the actual goals. It's hard to do. It's hard to ignore the tertiary function, I know.
You need to slow down. Think about your actions.
Okay, Dad.
It will help you go in a more focused direction and not just wherever feels good in the moment. And then that will eventually get you connected to that inferior function, introverted sensing, and you can have this deep groundedness and really know what your impact is on the future and on other people. And this will help you all stay healthy and happy and motivated and fun and exciting, and that really good ENFP style. So like I said before, I hope that it didn't sound too negative, but if it did, use it as a growth thing. Don't assume that I'm actually against ENFPs, because I'm not. I have a lot more that I will put in the Patreon PDF that I'm going to release, just like I did for the Neo and the Matrix one. I suggest you check it out, obviously. If you are interested in becoming a patron, and you want to know more about it, go to the website, private message me, I'll tell you anything you want to know. It does help me out a lot. It helps me, one, stay fueled and motivated, but it also helps me get the machinery and editing programs and stuff I need to make this a little bit more professional. And eventually I want to make it a more community, collective thing.
The world could always use more heroes.
I want us to all work together and use our strengths and weaknesses. Well, not use your weaknesses, but cover up those weaknesses so that we can make the world a better place. And we can have some more fun with life and explore all those awesome loot drops of life. Okay? So I'd like to thank Twinkle, the patron. Good guy. He's been following Geek Psychology for a while, and I was happy to see him contribute. So thank you very much. Keep up the lifelong questing. Good luck, have fun. Peace.